Yesterday, Russian President Vladimir Putin made it clear that the worst is yet to come as fighting in Ukraine continued for a ninth day. Russian forces have caused panic overnight after their shelling sparked a fire at Europe's largest nuclear power station. And that comes as Russian forces seized the southern Ukrainian city of Kherson yesterday. It's the first major city to fall so far. Joining me now to discuss this is a war correspondent, Nick Mutch. He is on the ground in Lviv in Ukraine. Thanks for joining us, Nick. If you can tell us broadly whereabouts you are in the country and what is going on in that area.
So I've been around the country, including in Kiev and further west. But right now, I'm currently in Lviv, which is it's probably the safest city. It's near the Polish border, and it's currently the center of the refugee crisis that you were talking exactly about. But there's quite a lot of very sad scenes here at the moment. You know, we're talking families separated. We're talking people queuing up and walking for up to 30 or 40 kilometers, desperately trying to get to the border to get to safety. Now, while Lviv remains safe for now, we do not know what the future will bring. For instance, I've seen a lot of military preparations here over the last few days, and everybody is worried that this might get suddenly much, much worse.
Right. And in terms of any kind of military build-up, you said you've seen a lot of preparations. Is that on the Ukrainian side defensive, or is there a sense of the area that you're in being in some way next up on a target list?
So one of the worries that we really do have is that there have been a lot of Belarusian troops seen on the border just to the north of Lviv. Now, yes, we see a lot of defensive operations going on, and it's mainly the sort of things like bringing more troops into the city, sandbagging up buildings and their windows, putting, as you were saying, the Czech Hedgehog anti-tank barriers on the way of all of the roads. However, I also, the other day, heard a half dozen fighter jets flying overhead. Now, we don't know who or what they were, but they really, really did feel like an ominous sign of terrible things to come here. But for now, the area remains safe.
So that must have been a pretty unnerving, alarming experience for yourself and, of course, for all the residents there. Do you get the sense that the majority of people in Lviv are determined to stay put, or are you seeing a kind of mass exodus from the area and attempts to get across borders?
So it's a little bit of both. There are a lot of Ukrainians here that have come from other parts of the country. I mean, yes, they say 1 million people have crossed the borders, but the crisis of internally displaced people is much, much greater. So, for instance, hostels, hotels have all mainly been turned into shelters. But that said, a lot of people are really, really willing to stay and fight here. I remember I saw one really tragic scene on the border yesterday. I interviewed a woman named Lydia who had just gone to the border to bring her 2 daughters across to Poland. Her 3 sons had all gone to Kiev to fight in the front line of the defense there. These are the kind of things that people are going through right now.
And in terms of everyday life, such as it is on the streets, you know, you said that a lot of places are being converted into shelters. Are shops open? I mean, to what extent is there a kind of surreal normality operating alongside this terrible sense of impending attack?
So most things are normal. Shops, about half are shut, about half are open. Everything closes quite early. There's a 10 p.m. curfew. You know, the sale of all alcohol has been banned, and a lot of the men specifically are kind of being enlisted into the volunteer territorial forces. Every day you see more and more troops on the street. When I arrived here about 3 or 4 days ago, that wasn't the case. So every day it moves further and further away from that kind of normality. That said, life still does go on to some extent. You know, you can still see people in bars and restaurants. A lot of people say that the crisis they don't feel has quite hit them yet, and that they feel as if they're watching a film in the rest of the country.
And in terms of the morale of the local population, obviously it's very difficult this end to separate propaganda. You know, what are the Russians putting out there? What's propaganda that we're receiving this end? Is there a sense amongst the population there that there is still hope that they can defeat overwhelming military superiority on the Russian side? Or is there a sense of a kind of dark inevitability that this country is going to be taken over and broken up by the Russian president?
So I have to say the vast majority of Ukrainian people I've met are very, very determined. So, for instance, I will go back to what you were saying in your opinion about the refugee crisis, about people wanting to return. I dropped one of my best friends here off at the train station to make her way to Poland today. And I said, you know, when I'm done here, I'll see you in Warsaw. And she said, no, you will see me in Kiev, in a free Ukraine. And that's the kind of the sense that people have, that they really, really will give everything they can. People here feel that they are fighting not just for their lives, but for their entire nation, for their entire country. Now, there are some people who have a defeatist attitude, not that they're necessarily wrong, because there is overwhelming military superiority on the Russian side. But so far, that military superiority hasn't turned into the gains that we think Vladimir Putin and the Kremlin expected. And the longer this conflict drags out, the more international pressure will rain down on Russia, the more the sanctions will bite to start to take effect, the more there will be domestic political discontent within Russia. I think there is a sense that if Ukraine can hold out long enough, there will be some kind of issue that will stop Vladimir Putin in his tracks. Could that be wishful thinking? I suspect so, but it certainly can't be ruled out.
Nick Mutch in Lviv, thank you very much for your report.